Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Yamnatira Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we'll take a look at Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 16, Text 12. And I'll also share a few things on Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada from Bhakti Siddhanta, Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhava, book by my godbrother and friend. Thank you very much, Bhakti Vikash Swami. Okay, so text 12. Text 12, but I also want to take a look back at what brings us up to text 12, because as we'll see, text 12 is Lord Narayana summing up his remarks to the four sages and trying to cut a deal on behalf of his beloved servants. Also a note about the meter we've been chanting. The chanda or meter here is called Vasanta Tilakam. That makes me think of something else that I'm going to say in just a moment. But I'm going to try a different tune. I mean, the default is the tune that we typically use for Brahma Samhita. I'm going to try a different tune that should be easy to follow. But if you object, just let me know and we'll go back to our default. It's not a problem. I just wanted to try something different. Nama wanted to, he actually asked permission the other day to chant a different tune while we were chanting. And then he thought better of it. So, but I'm going to try something, if I can remember. Gotcha. Tan me svabhartu avasayam alakshamano tan me svabhartu avasayam alakshamano. That's not exactly what I had. Yushmad Vyatikrama Gatim Ratip. Oh, I wanted the note. The name of this chanda or meter is called Vasanta Tilakam. Vasanta Tilakam means springtime ornament. So tilakam means an ornament. And the Vaishnava, actually all, I guess you'd say religious Hindus wear some sort of tilak or another. I used to have a book called, it was called Vaishnava Tilaks or something like that. And it was like pictures and discussions of all the different kinds of tilak that different kinds of Vaishnavas wear, including different Gaudiya Vaishnava tilaks. We wear a sort of generic, I guess what we could call a sort of generic tilak. Some people will ask, what is your tilak? Is that a tulsi leaf or a banyan leaf? Are you Dvaita Parivar, Nityananda, whatever? But the tilak is a decoration actually for the soul. Someone asked me about it the other day, one of our guests, I think, and I said, one way to look at it, for us anyway, is that it's like when you see, say you see a car from the health department come in, it says, City and County of Honolulu Department of Health, for official use only. So when we wear tilak, when we apply tilak in the morning, we're reminding ourselves, this body is a temple of the Lord. So the devotees become very beautiful when decorated with Vaishnava tilak. And actually, now that I think about it, Srila Oh, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was teaching, especially after his conversion, he would castigate students who would show up without tilak in the morning. It means they didn't do their worship that morning, right? And he would look at them and he would say, it's like looking at a graveyard. Something like that. Okay. Yushmad Vyatikrama. Old men and children can get away with saying anything. Prabhupada said that, right? Old men and children can get away with saying anything. So pardon me for taking that moment. Gatim Pratipadya Sadya Yushmad Vyatikrama-gatim Pratipadya Sadya. Should we rewind and try it again?
Next time.
As you order. Yogya. Bhuyo Mamantikam Etam Tat Anugraho Me Bhuyo Mamantikam Etam Tat Anugraho Me. Works. Yet Kalpatam Achirito Vritayo Vivasaha Yat Kalpatam Achirito Vritayor Vivasaha Tanme Swabharturavasaya Malakshamano Yushmad Vyatikrama-gatim Pratipadya Sadya. Bhuyo Mamantikamitam Tadanugraho Me. Yat Kalpatam Achirito Vritayor Vivasaha. Tanme Swabharturavasaya Malakshamano. Yushmad Vyatikrama-gatim Pratipadya Sadya. Bhuyo Mamantikamitam Tadanugraho Me. Yat Kalpatam Achirito Vritayor Vivasa. Others, please.
Tanme Sovartor Avasaya Malakshamano.
Swabhartur Avasaya Malakshamano.
Yushmad Vyatikrama-gatim Pratipaya Sadya.
Yushmad Vyatikrama-gatim Pratipadya Sadya.
Bhuyo Mamantikam Itam Tat Anugraho Me.
Bhuyo Mamantikamitam Tadanugraho Me.
Yat Kalpatam Achirato Vritayor Vivasaha.
Yat Kalpatam Achirito Vritayor Vivasa. Tanme Swabhartur Avasaya Malakshamano. Yushmad Vyatikrama-gatim Pratipadya Sadya. Bhuyo Mamantikamitam Tadanugraho Me. Synonyms. Tat, therefore. May, my. Svabhartu, of their master. Avasayam, the intention. In alakshamano, not knowing. Yushmat, against you. Vyatikrama, offense. Gatim, result. Pratipadya, reaping. Sadya, immediately. Bhuya, again. Mama antikam, near me. Itam, obtain. Tut, that. Anugraha, a favor. May, to me. Yet, which. Kalpatam, let it be arranged. Achirita, not long. Britayo, of these two servants. Vilasa, exile. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. These servants of mine have transgressed against you, not knowing the mind of their master. I shall therefore deem it a favor done to me if you order that, although reaping the fruit of their transgressions, they may return to my presence soon, and the time of their exile from my abode may expire before long. Responsibly, please. These servants of mine have transgressed against you, not knowing the mind of their master. I shall therefore deem it a favor done to me if you order that, although reaping the fruit of their transgression, they may return to my presence soon. And the time of their exile from my abode may expire before long. Srila Prabhupada's purport. From this statement, we can understand how anxious the Lord is to get his servitor back into Vaikuntha. This incident therefore proves that those who have once entered a Vaikuntha planet can never fall down. The case of Jaya and Vijaya is not a fall down, it is just an accident. The Lord is always anxious to get such devotees back again into the Vaikuntha planets as soon as possible. It is to be assumed that there is no possibility of a misunderstanding between the Lord and the devotees, but when there are discrepancies or disruptions between one devotee and another, one has to suffer the consequences, although that suffering is temporary. The Lord is so kind to his devotees that he took all the responsibility for the doorman's offense and requested the sages to give them facilities to return to Vaikuntha as soon as possible. Om Ajnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Mukhaṁ karoti vāchalam bhangum lankayate girim jatkripatamaham vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupakadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhobhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Tanme Svabhartura Vasaya Malakshamana Yushmad Vyatikramaгаtim Pratipadya Sadhya Bhuyo Mamantikam Itam Tadanugraho Yat Kalpitam Achirato Pratayo Vivasa. These servants of mine have transgressed against you, not knowing the mind of their master. I shall therefore deem it a favor done to me if you order that, although reaping the fruit of their transgression, they may return to my presence soon, and the time of their exile from my abode may expire before long. So as I mentioned, this is Lord Narayan summing up his remarks to the sages and asking for a favor. Grant me a boon. This is the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Vaikuntha, humbly taking responsibility for a mistake made by his servants. These are my people after all. They're really close to me. I'm really close to them. They're in my heart. I am tied to their hearts, as we see in Krishna's instructions. We see in the 11th canto. I'm trying to remember where that verse is. Just lost it. But in the 11th canto, we see, no, it's Krishna speaking to Uddhava, I believe, that he is bound to the devotees' hearts by ropes of love, ropes of affection. This is a really powerful bond. It's the affection that made it possible for Krishna to be bound by Mother Yashoda. It wasn't his desire to get into trouble or anything like that. It was affection. She made that effort to get that grace, and out of affection, he said, okay, this time let's make it work. Even though his lower lip was trembling, and there were tears streaming down his cheeks, and more tears like balancing on the edges of his eyelids, and shaking pearl necklace around his neck shook. He said, okay, Mom, let's do it. We can time it up. So this is the Lord's mentality. His affection for his devotees is so strong that he takes responsibility. He said, look, if it makes you happy, I'd cut off my arm. Whatever it takes. Because you're Brahmanas. So I have to please you. But these are my servants. So I have to take care of them too. These are my people. So I have to take care of them too. So let's review these last, say 12 verses. Just so we have a context for this. The personality of Godhead said, these attendants of mine, Jaya and Vijaya by name, have committed a great offense against you because of ignoring me. So here he's framing it. Right? There's a frame on this on his remarks here. They've committed this offense because they've missed my point. Right? They ignored me. They weren't thinking about my desire right at that moment. And here at the end, he says the same thing, right? They misunderstood me. They missed me. It's a mistake. Okay, so they have to pay for the mistake, but could you cut me a little slack and let them come back quicker? O great sages, I approve of the punishment that you who are devoted to me have meted out to them. To me, the Brahmana is the highest and most beloved personality. The disrespect shown by my attendants has actually been displayed by me, because the doormen are my servitors. I take this to be an offense by myself. Therefore, I seek your forgiveness for the incident that has arisen. So even the Supreme Personality of Godhead takes responsibility for a mistake, even if it's not made by him. And he's begging forgiveness. A wrong act committed by a servant leads people in general to blame his master, just as a spot of white leprosy on any part of the body pollutes all of the skin. Anyone in the entire world, even down to the Chandala, who lives by cooking and eating the flesh of the dog, is immediately purified if he takes bath in hearing through the ear the glorification of my name, fame, etc. Now you have realized me without doubt. Therefore I will not hesitate to lop off my own arm if its conduct is found hostile to you. Because I am the servitor of my devotees, my lotus feet have become so sacred that they immediately wipe out all sin, and I have acquired such a disposition that the goddess of fortune does not leave me, even though I have no attachment for her, while others praise her beauty and observe sacred vows to secure from her even a slight favor. I do not enjoy the oblations offered by the sacrificers in the sacrificial fire, which is one of my own mouths, with the same relish as I do the delicacies overflowing with ghee, which are offered to the mouths of the brahmanas, who have dedicated to me the results of their activities, and who are ever satisfied with my prasad. I am the master of my unobstructed internal energy, and the water out of the Ganges is the remnant left after my feet are washed. That water sanctifies the three worlds, along with Lord Shiva, who bears it on his head. If I can take the dust of the feet of the Vaishnavas on my head, who will refuse to do the same? The brahmanas, the cows, and the defenseless creatures are my own body. Those whose faculty of judgment has been impaired by their own sin look upon these as distinct from me. They're just like furious serpents, and they're angrily torn apart by the bills of the vulture-like messengers of Yamaraj, the superintendent of sinful persons. On the other hand, they captivate my heart, who are gladdened in heart, and who, their lotus faces enlightened by nectarian smiles, respect the brahmanas, even though the brahmanas utter harsh words. They look upon the brahmanas as my own self, and pacify them by praising them in loving words, even as a son would appease an angry father, or as I am pacifying you. It's gonna be okay. Right? These servants of mine have transgressed against you, not knowing the mind of their master. I shall therefore deem it a favor done to me if you order that, although reaping the fruit of their transgression, they may return to my presence soon, and that the time of their exile from my abode may expire before long. So Srila Prabhupada mentions quite plainly in his purport a couple times, not possible to fall from Vaikuntha. Doesn't happen. Except once in a blue moon, I guess we would say. I don't know if they have blue moons up there. If they have what's a blue moon? 2 full moons in 1 month is a blue moon, right? The second full moon in 1 month is a blue moon. So it's a very rare occasion. Doesn't happen very often. It happens, and it happens simply by the Lord's arrangements to bring about some lila. So here the Lord's saying, okay, this is something that doesn't happen. So can I please get my boys back soon? Just, okay, I know we have to do this. I don't want to like play the God card and invalidate the punishment that you've given them. But could we give them a little leniency, because they're my folks? So this is a big thing, and so there'll be a turn beginning with tomorrow's verse. A little Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Katha. So I'm going to start at the beginning. This is Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhava by His Holiness Bhakti Vikasa Swami. I really like to read from. I've gotten used to reading over the many years from Srila Bhakti Ballabhatirtha Maharaj's, Sri Chaitanya's Life and Associates or something like that, because he's brought together things from a number of different sources into a fairly concise biographical essay, even the long ones that may go on for several pages. And several pages It's a coffee table book. And that I used to have a copy of it, but it's not available in Kindle, and I haven't been able to find a PDF version of it. And I just found it on Amazon, and I'm thinking I've got to save up. Maybe I can get one next month, because it's just a really cool book. Bhakti Vallabh Tirtha Maharaj was a disciple of one of Prabhupada's godbrothers, Damodar Maharaj. So, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada appeared in this world at 3:30 p.m. on 6 February 1874, the 5th day of the dark lunar fortnight of the month of Govinda of the Gaudiya Vaishnava calendar, corresponding to the Bengali month of Magh. The month of Magh is the month of January, February. We read in Nectar of Devotion that even though it's cold in the month of Magh, we don't hesitate from taking a bath in the river. And I remember when I lived on the farm on the Big Island, it's up the mountain a ways. And I was there late fall and part of the winter, 72, early 73. And if it rained, the devotees had built the place so that there was a short side to the roof and a long side to the roof, and the long side of the roof had a gutter. And then we had pallets set, I think, at 3 different spots depending on how hard it was raining. So if it wasn't raining terribly hard, there was a pallet that we could stand on and bathe in the water coming from the gutter. And then there were rain barrels in the other 2 spots that we would fill up, and the pujari could use that in midday to bathe before he did the noon offering and arati and stuff. So if it was raining, we would bathe there. If it wasn't raining, we had to go up the hill to a cow pond, and we would jump into the cow pond, and we would almost inevitably assist, because I was there in the winter and it was chilly in the morning, and the pond was cool. We would say, well, even in the month of Magh, splat. We had a little dock built on the cow pond. We would jump off the dock into the cow ponds. So the month of Magh. He appeared in Puri, the site of the famous temple of Lord Jagannath, and thus one of the holiest places in India, and where Lord Chaitanya had resided for 18 years, absorbed in the highest ecstasies of Krishna consciousness. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's advent in Puri is particularly significant in the light of a statement in the Padma Purana. In Kali Yuga, the 4 Vaishnava Sampradayas, which are purifiers of the earth, will appear in Purushottam Chaitra and Utkala, Orissa. He appeared in his parents' rented home, which, due to their being pure devotees, continually reverberated with Sankirtan. It belonged to Sri Ramchandra Arya, a rich Calcutta businessman, who had built it on land leased from the Dakshina Pashvamat, which was situated on the Grand Road, hardly a quarter of a mile from Lord Jagannath's temple, just south of the landmark Narayana Chatamat and close to the Jagannath Vallabha Udyana, the garden that had been frequented by Lord Chaitanya. At the child's birth, the umbilical cord was wrapped around his body like an upavita, sacred thread, leaving a permanent mark. During infancy, his sizable brain made his head look unusually large in proportion to his body. There are these pictures of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur as a little boy, and it is striking, the size of his cranium compared to the rest of his face. And it's not like he had a weak jaw or chin. I mean, we see the pictures of him as an adult, and he has a pretty strong jaw and chin. But he had as a little boy, he had this huge brain. Okay, in the interest of time, I have to look for a couple of other things here that I wanted to share. Oops. Oh. One thing he did that we know is he took a vow to chant 1 billion names. So Maharaj writes, during 1905, at age 31, Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati took a vow to chant daily at least 3 lakh holy names, and monthly at least 10 million names, until he had chanted 1 billion names. He chanted on a japamala given by Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who had himself used them to fulfill a vow of chanting 1 billion holy names. Sri Siddhanta Saraswati's Shatakoti Nam Jagya which he performed before a deity of Lord Chaitanya, lasted just over 9 years and 4 months, and was punctuated by much struggle and several colorful incidents, including attempts to oust him from Mayapur. Yet he was determined to continue service there no matter what. He had cleared an overgrown area at the yoga pit and made a grass hut in which he lived from 1905 to 1909 amid his many books and manuscripts. Slept on the earth. Once a day he cooked plain rice in a clay pot, ate nothing more. 9 years and 4 months. Living in a grass hut, sleeping on the floor, eating nothing but some rice just once a day. He also managed the affairs at the yoga pit. He chanted, now 3,300,000 holy names. That's what we generally consider to be 196 rounds, 3 sets of 64 rounds. So that's a lot of chanting. Thakur Haridas did that. He chanted 3 lakhs, 196 rounds. Shri Shri Pancha Tattva Ki Jai. Okay, the clock is still ticking, so I want to look for another thing. Oh, there's a section called the dynamism of the mats. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was the first Gaudiya Acharya to establish mats along the lines of those founded by Acharyas of Shankara and Madhva as monastic seminaries with emphasis on scriptural training and also incorporating deity service. He exhorted the Matavasis to take advantage of their good fortune, quoting, Mathanti vasanti yatra paramartha sikshartinaha iti mataha. Mat means a place wherein reside persons desirous to learn the ultimate purpose of life. He also wrote, Shiksha mandirera nama mata, a temple of instruction is called a mat. He gave the analogy of the Gaudiya hospital, wherein Harinam was the medicine and Mahaprasad the diet, and whose inmates were both to undergo and administer treatment. These mats were not mere residential colleges or spiritual sanatoriums, but dynamic preaching bases formed in pursuance of the dictum of Srila Saraswati Thakur's own coinage that he frequently quoted, Prana Chaitanya se hetu prachar, one who has life can preach. He expected the Matvasis to be surrendered, dedicated, and detached, joining him in sacrificing their soul for establishing and spreading the mission. Skipping ahead, he wanted men of backbone, active preachers like himself, ready to give their lives for propagating Shuddha Bhakti. He declared, I wish that every selfless, tender-hearted member of the Gaudiya Mat be prepared to shed 200 gallons of blood for the nourishment of the spiritual body of every individual in human society. Now, Maharaj explains that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, by the count of his disciple Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, had 3,000 disciples, about 3,000 disciples, but by that he means fully initiated disciples. He means those who had gotten Vaishnava Diksha or Mantra Diksha. So that's what we call second initiation colloquially in Iskcon. And maybe a few thousand more who had been given Harinama Ashrita, given the shelter of the holy name by the grace of their spiritual master, which is what we refer to as first initiation. In his book, Maharaj gets into the weeds about discussing the kinds of names that he gave some of his disciples. He would only add the das at the time of mantra diksha or second initiation. So I found that kind of an interesting kind of thing. He had maybe, I think, 12 Tridandi sannyasi disciples who were very powerful teachers of the holy name. And then there was one more thing I wanted to look at. I'm supposed to do what I say. Oh, I like this quote. There's one quotation I want to share before I give up. He emphasized, he said that all the other angas of sadhana bhakti need to be performed by the sadhakas, but they must be accompanied by the chanting of the holy name. He said that's the real sadhana, the topmost sadhana. So he wrote, to make us wholly devoted to Krishna's name, Sri Gauranga Dev, Lord Chaitanya, the combined form of Sri Radha Govinda, came to this world. But if we disregard his teachings and show no interest in Sri Nam Seva, we will never attain auspiciousness. Sri Nam Sankirtan is the best sadhana. If other sadhanas help us in Krishna Sankirtan, then they deserve to be called sadhanas. They're meant to help us improve our chanting. And there were some dynamics that you would find sometimes in the bhat, in the treatment of devotees who, there was a whole thing about seniority. Seniority had to do with the length of time you'd been committed to the mission, and people in senior positions would be shown favor, and people who had second initiation or mantra diksha would be shown favor over people who had first initiation. And there was one point, they got to the point where they had the people who had mantra diksha sitting separately from the other devotees to take prasad. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati just put his foot down. And he said, those who have mantra diksha are inferior to those who have Harinam, because they think they've got something more. Something to that effect. I mean, he just made this point. Oh, you think you're better because you have mantra diksha, because you've got these mantras for worshiping the deities, pancharatriki mantras. No, they're better than you are, because their faith is in the holy name. That's all they've got. You think you got something more, so not something. Just forget about it. It's really an interesting point that he made. Sri Krishna Nam if other sadhanas help us in Sri Krishna Sankirtan, then they deserve to be called sadhana. Otherwise, they're simply impediments to sadhana. Sri Krishna Nam Sankirtan is the emperor of sadhanas. It is the only infallible sadhana capable of bringing us to siddhi. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, at the end of his collection of songs on Sharanagati, the way of taking shelter of the Lord, has a wonderful song called Nama Mahatmya. It's a glorification of the holy name. And in that song he explains how the holy name gives us everything, including our spiritual body and our service to Krishna. It takes us directly to Krishna's side and engages us in our eternal service to Radha and Krishna. It is the only infallible sadhana capable of bringing siddhi. Sriman Mahaprabhu did not speak of teaching Archana, but in Shikshastaka he taught Nam Bhajan. Although in Kali Yuga other limbs of bhakti should be performed, they should be accompanied by bhakti denoted by kirtan. So, a little bit about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and winding up Lord Narayan's remarks to the Chatursana, the four sanas, Sanat, Sanatana, Sanaka, and Sanandana. Quick questions or comments?
The worse.
I'm sorry.
Because you're saying, I don't remember any verse where they have already spelled out the curse. Was there any verse?
It's coming.
Not yet. It's still.
This is verse 12.
Still
So
not
we're still.
published as if it is done.
The chapter's called Jai and Vijay are cursed by the four Kumaras, and they're going to get the curse. But the curse was spelled out. The curse was at least alluded to. You guys don't belong here because you're seeing differences. And this is a place where that doesn't fit here. That doesn't work here. You need to be someplace where that works. So they're telling them, you guys need to go to the material world. So the Lord's saying, okay, so you've relegated them to at least some time in the material world. Can we just abbreviate it, please? And the specifics of the curse will be revealed to the patient in the rest of the chapter. Anything else? Jai Gopal, of course.
Do you have any idea what
would happen to Jai and Vijay in between their demoniac births, like they become Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, and then when they're defeated by Lord Vishnu, where do they go? To Brahmajyoti or emerge into the body of Lord Vishnu? I was just kind of
No.
curious.
Do I have any idea? No.
No, okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
That's what there is.
Speculative.
I got nothing.
Speculative.
Yeah. Anything else?
So where the picture you mentioned about the Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati child, where his brain is full. It's kind
Well,
of
you can
similar.
probably find it on Facebook today, or whatever social media you use.
Yes, on Google or something.
It's a kind of funny looking picture. I mean, it may have had as much to do with the limitations of photography back then as anything else, because it was like probably early 1880s that was taken. Anything else? Grantharaja Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Shri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati